At the end of last year, we were lucky enough to get a little gothic gem called In Death, which showed off why the move's one-to-one tracking are a great match for using a bow and arrow in terms of immersion and gameplay. Those that fancied a challenge couldn't get enough of the roguelike shooter, returning time after time to raise their high score and unlock new items to use for their next run. Even with all the much-deserved praise, there were still a couple people that felt a little left out, feeling that the challenge was a little too overwhelming for them and wishing they could have some help along the way. Set in a more fantasy-like setting, QuiVR is either single-player or up to 4-player co-op online and is a procedurally generated shooter where your objective is to defend your keep against hordes of goblins, creatures, and bosses. You'll have to choose your point of attack wisely by shooting several targets placed around each map, teleporting you around the level. I really like this mechanic since it keeps the emphasis on using the bow and gives you plenty of freedom to move around and choose from the provided angles. It does force snap turning, but it's not as much of a problem when you're perched up and more focused on aiming. But still, smooth turning should really be a standard option by now. The bow and arrow gameplay is without question the best yet. There's an option to grab the arrows from your hip and to adjust the bow strength if you don't want to have to pull it all the way back. You can fire arrows rapidly, but the game really wants you to take your time, gaining a charged shot, pulling the bow back, and waiting, which gives you the chance to do a little bit more damage or take out the enemies in one shot. There are also power-ups that enemies will randomly drop, which grant you a limited amount of arrows that deal elemental damage. After clearing a stage which consists of a few areas and ends with a boss battle, you'll be awarded a random loot drop that you can equip there or in your armory at the main menu. You can customize your mask, armor, bow, quiver, and gloves, each of which provide a variety of status effects and attacks that range from shooting a fiery tornado, freezing enemies, leeching health, or even throwing a blast charge. Not only do you have a high score to chase, but this adds a great combination of cosmetic and stats progression to the system. There are some issues to be addressed. The graphics, for one, are pretty inconsistent. Your bow and hands look crystal clear, but then there is a lot of sporadic aliasing elsewhere. Some areas, although not very detailed, can still look pretty good, but then there are others that look blurry and ugly. The character designs have a nice variety in detail, but oftentimes it can just appear as a colorful blur. There's also some occasional orientation issues. The first time I booted it up, my character was really low to the ground, causing me to have to duck, recalibrate, and stand up. There were also times where if you're turned and then teleport to a new spot, it starts you sideways and you have to quickly turn forward. There's also a glass shield that is supposed to help you not get turned around, but really is more of a distraction than helpful.
Yeah, moving up.
We don't often have the luxury of playing games with our friends, but QuiVR offers anywhere from 2 to 4 players co-op, which is easily the best way to experience the game. Once in the lobby, you can wait for others or press square to directly invite them from the menu. All of this was pretty seamless and user-friendly. However, you can accidentally kick your friends out of the armory if you're all in there at once and one leaves. Once you begin, the enemies will increase in numbers and health, so you and your friends will have quite the challenge ahead of you. And you'll most likely have to grind the first chapter a few times until you get enough upgrades and practice before being able to proceed further.
Lucky boys.
I got a new mask.
That was brilliant.
Wow.
Like In Death, QuiVR is really challenging and offers top-notch bow and arrow gameplay. There are a few technical issues, but it more than makes up for it with 4-player co-op. If you're into a challenge like I am, then you'll be perfectly fine playing solo, but the best way is always going to be online.